Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Monday, February 21st. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. California has entered a new phase in the fight against COVID-19, but not everyone is ready to ease into the new normal just yet. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman explains.
I really don't see a new normal for me yet.
Kearny Mesa resident Bianca Santos received a kidney from her cousin a few years ago. She since had to take immune-compromising drugs to keep her body from rejecting the organ. That means the flu or even food poisoning can be enough to send her to the hospital. Being high risk, she's mostly been staying at home during the pandemic.
I don't want to regret it at the end of the day, knowing that, I hung out with someone who's actually positive, and I just found out. That's what scares me right now.
Those who are immunocompromised may not get full or any protection from COVID-19 vaccinations, so extra doses are being recommended.
In fact, I got my fourth shot already last weekend.
But Santos isn't sure how to feel about transitioning into the next pandemic phase.
Moving away from a reactive mindset and a crisis mindset to living with this virus.
The last few days, I keep thinking about the words like the world has moved on without me or without people who are undergoing the same things as I do.
Moving to an endemic response is also a recognition that the virus isn't going away.
Sometimes it's a hard pill for me to swallow that just takes longer time for me to get the normal, and I'm having trouble digesting one that normal would be for me if it takes like a few more years longer.
We're hearing from state and local officials that the pandemic response will continue with vaccines, testing, and treatments.
But again, all of that is more in a state of endemic, a state of preparing for things we prepare for, just like we prepare for the flu, and just like we prepare for other respiratory viruses.
I wouldn't really word it that way, but then for people who have normal immunity, I guess it's so easy for them to say that.
Santos is hoping to take a new antibody treatment that should give her some immunity against infection.
There hasn't been too much guidance for people suffering like me, except from my doctor. And he just says, absolutely no restaurants.
Right now, her strategy is to continue to be cautious. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Schools in Poway want better guidance on when it will be okay to say goodbye to mask wearing. A letter from the superintendent asks Governor Newsom, local health officer Wilma Wooten, and others to end the mandates. One parent put his child in a private school partly because of the mask rules, but another says public health should be prioritized despite the inconvenience.
Masks don't work, and so it's all theater, and our children are being paid the price.
I was frustrated by the letter because it was definitely giving agency and license to the groups who have been protesting.
And Poway superintendent says the mask issue is causing more defiance among kids and harassment of teachers. A decision on further easing mask rules is expected by the end of the month. We need the rain, and we're about to get some more, and with it, some snow too. A winter storm warning is being issued, and it could lead to dangerous conditions in parts of the county. KPBS reporter Kitty Alvarado has more.
It's a beautiful drive to our local mountains, but come Tuesday afternoon, everything will change. The National Weather Service has issued a winter storm warning for Tuesday through Wednesday for our local mountains. After a mostly dry winter,
we're actually very excited about getting this snowfall and rain. It's kind of a two-edged sword. We do need the precip and the water, but also that comes with additional hazards with driving.
Division Chief Talbot Hayes with the U.S. Forest Service says they're preparing for severe weather to hit the mountain regions, and those headed up the mountain should too.
I would expect icy road conditions, especially if you're going to travel up to the higher elevations like Mount Laguna or Mount Palomar.
The storm is expected to bring at least 8 inches of snow, and with it, dangerous travel conditions, including icy roads and reduced visibility. Those who must travel to areas like Mount Laguna and Julian are urged to wait for the storm to pass, take extra precautions, and have emergency supplies.
Chains will probably be required to get up into those areas, and then some of the I-8 corridor will also be hazardous to drive on, so it'd be wise to reduce your speeds and just be really careful.
They shouldn't come up here without being prepared, have blankets, have water, have extra socks, have snow chains, and a shovel. You know, they just shouldn't be up here.
Tom, the co-owner of Laguna Mountain Lodge, says they're used to snow-packed storms, but for visitors, preparedness is the key when they come up to enjoy the winter wonderland. He's looking forward to welcoming guests.
Part of what keeps us going in the wintertime, because it's pretty slow up here, but it'll be busy. There'll be people everywhere, and it'll make the cash registers ring.
He just hopes people exercise caution and use common sense, like wait for the storm to pass to go hiking, dress for extreme weather, and know your limitations.
You know, people go do things they shouldn't do, go places without snow chains, and you know, we try to warn them, but everybody's got to learn on their own.
But mostly he hopes if you visit, you have fun and respect their beautiful mountain communities.
You just come up here and have a good time and take their trash home. I mean, it's a beautiful place.
Kitty Alvarado, KPBS News.
The United States continues to see Russia making preparations to invade Ukraine. A top White House official says an attack could begin in the coming hours or days and would be extremely violent. The latest now from reporter Isabel Rosales.
U.S. intelligence and satellite images reveal Russia going full speed ahead with military preps.
Today might be that day, and we hope that's not the case, which is why we continue to exhaust every possible diplomatic option here going forward.
In a TV broadcast, Russian President Vladimir Putin accusing the West of threats. The Russian president says he is officially recognizing the separatist regions in Ukraine as independent states. Putin airing his grievances about the breakup of the former Soviet republics.
Modern Ukraine from the beginning and in its totality has been created by Russia.
The U.S. and allies warn every indication shows Russia is preparing to invade.
These are not the actions of the Russian government fulfilling its repeated declarations that it has no intention of invading Ukraine.
The U.S. also says it has credible information about a Russian kill list, writing in a letter to the United Nations that Russia is identifying Ukrainians to be killed or sent to camps. The Kremlin denying the claim, calling it absolute fiction.
We believe that any military operation of the size, scope, and magnitude of what we believe the Russians are planning will be extremely violent. It will cost the lives of Ukrainians and Russians, civilians and military personnel alike.
The Russian escalation at the front lines is at odds with what Putin has said publicly. Putin agreeing to a summit with President Joe Biden.
He can do the right thing by finding a diplomatic path forward.
Biden accepting on the condition Russia not invade Ukraine. In Washington, Isabel Rosales, KPBS News.
San Diego gas prices started rising again today after a brief weekend pause. KPBS's Alexander Nguyen talked with a small business owner about how it's impacting him.
In a region as spread out as San Diego, you pretty much need a car to get around, and getting around isn't as cheap as it used to be. Gas prices are at a record high in San Diego. The average gas price is $4.74 a gallon. For people like William Glasham, that's hitting their pocketbooks hard.
But I'm not making as much money because I'm dumping $40 instead of $20.
He was fueling up at this gas station in Mid-City, where regular unleaded was nearly $5 a gallon. Glasham works as an electrician and tries to limit his trips as much as possible to keep costs down.
I don't make random drives anywhere, you know. I don't go to El Cajon for no reason, you know. I make it a purpose, and do as many stops as possible.
Part of the reason for the high prices is the tension in Ukraine that's driving up crude oil prices. The other reason is California is transitioning to a summer blend fuel, and AAA says that's 15 to 20 cents more expensive than winter blend.
And as well as the high demand, with fewer COVID restrictions, people are just driving more, so there's more demand.
And don't expect prices to go down anytime soon. AAA says prices will remain high until the Russia-Ukraine conflict de-escalates. Meanwhile, drivers in San Diego just
like to see the price of gas go down, Driving around all day long doesn't cut it,
Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
San Diego and the nation are seeing an alarming rise in traffic deaths. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen says even in cases of recklessness or negligence, drivers who kill often don't face any serious consequences.
The bike group got these flowers, and those have been there from almost the beginning.
Laura Keenan shows me around the roadside memorial she and others created for her husband, Matt. Last September, he was struck and killed by a wrong-way driver while biking in Mission Valley. Keenan is now the single mother of their 1-year-old son, Evan.
I miss waking up in the morning and seeing him cutting fruit for Evan and eating and smiling and making happy food noises, and I miss him being able to find humor in the most mundane or awful situations, and I miss how he makes me feel.
The death toll on city streets last year was 67, the deadliest year since San Diego adopted its Vision Zero goal of ending all traffic deaths. Some experts attribute the trend to more reckless driving during the pandemic. The driver who killed Matt said she thought she was on a one-way street and that she never saw Matt coming. Keenan doesn't buy it.
She drove into the bike lane, so even if she thought it was a one-way road, she left the legal driving limits of the road. And something had to make her extremely distracted. And really what that is shouldn't be the issue. She was so distracted that she did not see my husband, his extremely bright lights. She never hit the brakes. You hit the brakes for a box in the road, and she did not hit the brakes for my husband.
Keenan was devastated, infuriated, when the district attorney's office told her last month they didn't see enough evidence to charge the driver with a felony. Instead, they referred the case to the city attorney's office as a misdemeanor.
He lost his life, and I hoped that I would at least find some peace in our justice system.
Instead, Keenan found a whole new level of pain and suffering.
So vehicular manslaughter looks at the negligence of the driver who's at fault.
Mark Skeels is a civil attorney who previously prosecuted vehicular manslaughter cases in both the DA and city attorney's offices. He says felony charges have to involve gross negligence. The term is imprecise, but in practice it usually means if the driver was intoxicated or showed recklessness far beyond the norm.
In cases where it's simple negligence, maybe just you pull up to a stop sign and you look to your left, but you don't look back to your right before going, and you didn't realize a pedestrian walked out in front of your car. Stuff like that is going to be more characterized as simple negligence, and then in those cases, the charge will be filed as a misdemeanor.
San Diego County has seen nearly 300 prosecutions of vehicular manslaughter in the last 7 years, and roughly 2/3 were felonies. That number does not include traffic deaths where no criminal charges are filed at all. Skeels says prosecutors may also be reluctant to file felony charges because of jury bias. Most jurors in San Diego drive every day and are likely to put themselves in the defendant's shoes.
They generally think that they are themselves safe drivers, and so when they've been in incidents which were near misses or other collisions, I think they think it wasn't their fault, and so that permeates their mindset when they're sitting as jurors.
Too often, people use the word accountability as a proxy for punishment.
Amanda Berman works for the Center for Court Innovation in New York City. She's heard from countless families like Keenan's who say the legal system has failed them. So the center is developing a program that will bring drivers face to face with the loved ones of the victims they killed.
And hear from them firsthand who that person was and what the impact is of your actions, how it has destroyed lives, and having to confront that and reckon with that, it is is much more powerful and much more likely to change behavior.
Keenan says she's not all that concerned about how much time the driver spends behind bars, nor does she want an apology.
I think the only thing that would give me any peace from the driver is that she does something throughout her life to prevent this from happening again.
An outcome she's unlikely to get from the justice system. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The number of high wildfire risk days in Southern California may double by the end of this century, and that is according to a new study out of UCLA. Researchers found that if the average temperature increases by about 9 degrees by the year 2100, the annual number of high fire risk days would jump to 58 per year.
You get that hot, dry air, it dries out the fuels, and then we found that that then promotes ease of ignition of the fuels, hotter burns, and basically drier fuels. And so it's a bad combination.
And while these predictions are decades away, there are ways to lower the risk. Researchers say we need to continue to decrease greenhouse emissions, use fire-safe building materials in construction, and create more defensible space around structures.
Well, much cooler air is going to be moving in as we head into the day tomorrow. And with that, powerful storm diving southward brings rain for us into the lower elevations and snow in the mountains. That's right. It's going to be cold enough for accumulating snowfall for you in the mountains. And on top of that, we have gusty winds to contend with too. So we have wind advisories and high wind warnings that go into effect 8 a.m. Tuesday, lasting through 6 p.m. on Tuesday evening. Those high wind warnings are in effect there in the higher terrain, where we also have our winter storm warnings. Those go into effect 4 p.m. on Tuesday and last through 6 p.m. on Wednesday. And when we look at some of the accumulations here, we're expecting anywhere from 1 to 3 and potentially even 3 to 6 inches of snow in some of the higher terrain there. Again, some of the highest mountains there of Southern California. So this storm system, it certainly means business. As we head into tonight, temperatures get back down into the low to mid 40s for you into Ramona, Borrego Springs, low 30s out into Mount Laguna. And then again, that colder air really presses southward through the day on Tuesday. Temperatures back down into about 50 degrees in Ramona, 55 in Escondido, 61 for you out towards Oceanside. And we can time it out for you here. The clouds are with us all day Tuesday, but you'll notice that precipitation increasing as we head into late Tuesday evening and into the overnight period Tuesday night. That's when things really ramp up here. And again, that snow begins to creep into some of the mountains. The rain arrives in San Diego, and even the possibility of some small hail. We can't rule that out tomorrow night and into Wednesday. So a lot to unwrap here. Near the coast, temperatures low 60s with a couple showers Tuesday, more showers and cooler weather on Wednesday. And then beyond that, by Thursday, temperatures climb back up into the mid to upper 60s as we close out the work week. Further inland, low to mid 50s Tuesday and Wednesday with showers possible. Otherwise, temperatures recovering into the 60s and close to 70 by Friday and Saturday. In the mountains, looking at really strong winds and some snow, 30s and 20s on the board through Thursday. Temperatures on the rise beyond that. And as we look ahead to the deserts, temperatures here looking to drop back into the upper 50s with a couple showers and then a warming trend beyond. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
The first week of Major League Baseball's spring training is off. Players are still without a collective bargaining agreement, and negotiations are revving with the league officials. As of now, spring training won't begin until March 5th at the earliest. The regular season begins on March 31st and isn't impacted yet. The last thing Padres fans and businesses around Petco Park want is another round of closures. In paper processing and the pandemic, the IRS says the combination is crippling the agency, which could impact your tax return. But the IRS says it's making moves now to address a massive backlog of tax returns. Mary Maloney explains from Washington.
The IRS is in crisis.
As bad as you think the IRS is, it's actually worse.
Plagued by staffing shortages, old technology, and more work to administer pandemic programs like stimulus checks.
This past year was the most challenging year taxpayers and tax professionals have ever experienced.
The IRS is also struggling to communicate with taxpayers. At a Senate Finance Committee hearing, the National Taxpayer Advocate testified the IRS toll-free line only answered 11% of calls it received last year. And those who visited the Where's My Refund site online rarely got an answer.
Millions of taxpayers are confused. They're frustrated, and they're still waiting for the refunds from the last filing season.
To shrink the massive backlog of tax returns and address taxpayer confusion, the IRS is creating surge teams, essentially redirecting employees into entry-level positions. Even so, the IRS warns this year's return could be delayed.
We're again seeing IRS has a return backlog this season.
Another problem? Paper processing.
Paper is the IRS's kryptonite, and the agency is buried in it.
In order to modernize, the IRS says it needs more funding, something Congress likely won't agree on anytime soon.
There's a real challenge for the IRS having the resources to collect our taxes.
We gave out $3 1/10 billion last year, and I'd like to know how much of that money isn't spent before I'd consider spending more money.
In Washington, I'm Mary Maloney.
A 20-year study of post-9/11 vets showed one of the most common lingering injuries is tinnitus. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh says the impact lasts a lifetime.
Yolanda Taylor retired as a chief after 20 years in the Navy. She spent her entire career either in San Diego or based on ships homeported here.
First it was the ringing and buzzing, and then within the last 7 months, I've begun to have popping too, along with that ringing.
Taylor says it's more than annoying.
I lose my focus on it because I hear this. And when people are talking to me, sometimes I just, block it out. I hear you, but I hear this.
A study by the Navy that has followed post-9/11 vets shows 24% of vets have tinnitus. It's actually the most common disability among all veterans, with 1.5 million suffering veterans recognized by the VA. Paul Gaudiano is an audiologist with the San Diego VA.
Probably one of, if not the top, one of the top 1 or 2 service-connected disabilities for several years. I mean, it's really been a long-standing issue for a long time for a lot of veterans out there.
Noise exposure is a major reason it's common among vets, though it can also be caused by medication and other underlying conditions.
There's no direct cure for the ringing in the ears. There's no pill, there's no magic fix, there's no, here, take this and it goes away, unfortunately.
Distraction is the key. Taylor has a white noise machine to drown out the hum she hears. Patients are taught to stay away from silence. Some vets can't sleep.
When I go to bed, I'm asleep within 10 minutes. It allows me to sleep. But oh boy, when I wake up, there it goes. And I'm like, oh no. And I don't even try to lay in the bed. I just get up because it's so annoying.
Despite how common it is among veterans, the VA is currently looking at lowering disability ratings for patients with tinnitus. So future veterans may find it harder to qualify for benefits. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, Vladimir Putin orders Russian troops to eastern Ukraine after recognizing the independence of separatist regions. That's coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
A new children's book celebrating Black history has made it on the New York Times bestseller list with illustrations from a San Diego County artist. KPBS education reporter MG Perez was there as the artist shared his work with an elementary school class in El Cajon.
Thank you for coming in calmly.
It's hard for students to contain their excitement in Sarah Holbert's combination class of 2nd and 3rd graders here at Johnson Elementary in El Cajon. They've studied Black history the past few weeks, and now they have a special guest coming to visit in person, carrying some Black history of his own.
Even if a student isn't a person of color, I want them to know that we need to have diverse voices from different areas, and they should be listening to and hearing from all different kinds of people.
Who Are Your People? Written by Bakari Sellers, so he's the writer, and then illustrated by Reggie Brown, that's me.
Reggie Brown has illustrated 7 children's books in just the past 3 years. Who Are Your People is the latest. It's a vivid picture book of Black history heroes, with contemporary children pictured as well. Brown collaborated with the author and national commentator Bakari Sellers to carry a universal message to every student who reads it.
Black and brown kids can learn like resilience and just dreaming big and knowing where they come from, and that non-black kids can learn like empathy and understanding for people who don't have their same shared history.
The book touches on the reality of racism, which is a lesson that many of these children have their own experience with. 8-year-old Jordan Houston was especially moved by the page showing a lunch counter sit-in, a peaceful protest from the 1960s.
This is like about a bunch of black people. But I think the most messed up part was when the white person splashed the spaghetti stuff on the black person's head.
Brown is an illustrator with a mixed Filipino and black heritage. Besides the beautiful drawings, this story is about race, published at a time when race relations are critically conflicted. Who Are Your People jumped to number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list shortly after its release in January. 9-year-old Allison Santos loves to draw, and here's her take on the book. What is the book about?
It's about how you can be different from others.
And is that okay?
Yes.
You can make anime eyes.
Reggie Brown is also happy to share his talent along with his reading of the picture book, teaching these young artists that drawing their dreams can lead to making them a reality. What? MG Perez, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: by viewers like you. Thank you.